Welcome to your inspirational astrology horoscope and deep astrology, your weekly astrology forecast for this special solar eclipse in Aquarius and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries for this week of February the 17th to the 22nd, 2026. I'm your astrologer, David Palmer, the Leo King, here to illuminate the collective consciousness. Well, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for, of course, being a part of highvibe.tv. If you're not, make sure that you join up. It's pretty easy, highvibe.tv, or just type in highvibe TV on any of the app stores, even Roku, all of them. It's good to be with you all. Of course, we're going to channel the astrology and go deep into the charts for this extreme week, because we are definitely we're back. That was an Apple thing. Turn that shit off. I hate when Apple does that shit. Fuckers. Apple always trying to get involved with your stupid shit. Trying to turn on my iPhone when I'm on a mic. Anyway, lost my train of thought there. But that's kind of the energy anyway. Where is anything going? The frazzle dazzle. I don't even remember where we were. That just totally just fucked me up. Either way, we're going to go deep into the charts, and we are going to be very focused on this energy that has been what you thought was critical mass, especially going back 2023 with Pluto when it made its ingress into Aquarius, or going back to 2024 with us finally seeing Pluto finally stay in Aquarius, or even 2025 with these outer planet shifts, but then retrograding back. We, of course, have finally seen Saturn make its ingress into Aries, and we have that conjunction that will follow this solar eclipse in Aquarius this week. So this is going to be a big show, and spread this one around, because this is definitely, out of all my years of doing this and doing a daily horoscope for a long time, this channel on my YouTube, I mean, this channel by itself started in 2011. I was talking about a lot of this stuff prior on my older YouTube and on Soul Garden and all these other places. It's never come to this point before, even close, on the energy meter, the energetics, the shift of humanity, the shift of all of our own lives. So I'm going to start first with just the image of what I made for this one, to try and get a better. It doesn't want to show the desktop. Are you fucking kidding me? Man, I'm having some issues right now. Will it even show this one? It'll show this one. That's so weird. What a day. Will it show this one? Oh, yeah, well, guess it doesn't want anything full screen. That's so weird. Either way. I put it as like, the cord being plugged in, but then there's a bunch of shock. And if you notice, of course, the solar eclipse, but then, of course, there is Saturn-Neptune, this energy of like Saturn structures, barriers, walls, dissolving. And is that a brighter world behind? There's a lot that goes on with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I mean, the last one we saw was back in 1989 in June. And at the same time, the last time we saw a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries at 0 degree was 4,361 BC. So, Saturn-Neptune transits they take a long time, right? There's a 36-year transit that's finally coming in. But then to have it at 0 Aries, it's over 6,000 years, almost 6,000 years ago. So when you add all that up with this week, a solar eclipse in Aquarius at 28 degrees of Aquarius, it's a North Node eclipse, even though the North Node is still in Pisces. It's an interesting one because it's in direct square to Uranus sitting in Taurus, and Uranus is the dispositor to Aquarius. So when you even have Uranus in Taurus, anything that we're trying to hold on to that just isn't going to pass that higher frequency vibration, well, it ain't gonna stay. No matter how much you want to hold on to it, right? So we're on for a wild ride in our lives, and I think that shock value, it's still taking time for the collective or even in your individual life to even come to terms with. Part of Saturn Neptune is coming to terms with what we do want to kind of push to the side or what we don't really want to face yet, because Neptune's all about, I don't want to face this yet. Let's push that one back. Let's put that in the closet. Let's sweep that under the rug. And so this is a weird eclipse because it's putting you in the middle of all this stuff and bringing to a head all these things that are fragmenting, that are breaking apart in your life and taking you on a wild ride, literally. It's not very Jupiter. It's not some big, great adventure, right? It's not some story. I mean, this is definitely like, okay, what is energetically connecting and what is not? That's the hard part about Aquarius. It's very fixed energy. It's not a mutable sign like Sagittarius, where, Jupiter likes to rule over because stories can shift and the big fish, the little fish. Aquarius is, no, it's a fixed nature, and this is not going to work, and this is going to advance, this is not. We're moving into a lot of this energy just with all these air energies, but of course now with Saturn, Neptune, and fire, we're going to see Uranus, of course, ingress back into Gemini in the end of April, and we get this air and fire energy, and we're moving completely out of this earth water, which has been, what we've thought of the 2000s, but no, it's going to be an air fire time now. And I think that this is also an interesting moment because it is cracking open the energy of the age of Aquarius. Whether you want to look at the Pluto-Uranus trine that's coming up this year, or the mutual reception of this energy right now with Saturn. Saturn and Mars are in mutual reception. So as Saturn's now in Aries, that's the fall position for Saturn. But Mars is in Aquarius, so you have Mars that would rather be in Aries, and you have Saturn that would rather be in Aquarius. So that actually gives a much stronger Saturn and a much better Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but it's all going to be Uranus-based. So that's the irony of all this, is having Mars in Aquarius throughout this process, even with the solar eclipse, and then we have Pluto, which happens to be in Aquarius. So those two planets are extreme, and they're 100% the definers. Mars and Pluto, they define things. They define what we're going towards, what we desire and want, what's coming to an end, what's going to be that new beginning, what is it that's going to define these things in life. There is no subtlety. The problem is that we're all kind of caught up in this middle of subtlety, as it's almost maybe too much to expect, because nothing that we expect is happening. And then it's also too much to kind of like understand and face. This is Saturn and Neptune finally going to meet this week. And it's one big transit that finally has us really go through this deep veil to finally start to peek out and see what's on the other side. So it's quite the week. Don't forget that Mercury is in Pisces, and it's at its super fall position, and it's also in its pre-shadow. And we're going to see Mercury slow down dramatically this week as after the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and just as we come into the following week, we're going to see Mercury retrograde. So, this is definitely a time where the discomfort is part of the process, especially with Jupiter being in Cancer retrograde and it not stationing yet. It's interesting that Jupiter's more correlated with the lunar eclipse that will be in the next 2 weeks in Virgo. And that's the exact same one we had in 2007 at the same degree, 12 degrees, same date, that we'll have at the beginning of March. Ironically, both these eclipses, even though the solar eclipse that we're going to have at 28 degrees during this week in Aquarius is a North Node eclipse, It's not the same degree as the North Node solar eclipse in Aquarius. The one that happened, of course, back then was 2008. And ironically, the same lunar eclipse we're about to have happened in 2007. There's an irony that we all are approaching the eclipses that we're coming into right now are the ones that brought on the Great Recession. I know that might not be easy, but I made a lot of jokes on High Vibe last week about Craigslist. It was the time of Craigslist. Like Craigslist kind of saved our lives. And that was the community portal that whether you wanted to find a job, you needed to sell something, you needed to do something, we were all Craigslist obsessed. I look at that as like the AI world now, right? Like the way, how are we all going to get through these things that are, because instead of like defining things so much as like, a recession, a depression, or whatever, this is definitely a time of like, what is Aquarius and what is the square to Uranus in the middle of it, especially solar eclipse? It's taking routes that are very different than you've ever taken before, trying things you've never tried before. And that Uranus and Taurus definitely brings that to be faced extremely. So I think overall, this is a time for people to remember the discomfort is important because of the fact that you probably wouldn't advance in your life if you just stayed in the same energy. The mover and shaker is Uranus. To have Mars and Pluto in Aquarius here, with the solar eclipse in Aquarius, it does not want you to feel comfortable. You have to, Saturn is the other co-ruler, of course, of Aquarius, and it's not comfortable to take risk. Aquarius is a risk. It's a risk whether you're going to plug into this or not, right? That's why I put this in here, right? There's nothing more scary, I think, in life. I mean, I'm a man, so it might be different for anybody else out. Like if you're a woman out there or non-binary, whatever you are. As a man, we deal with like these crazy higher voltages a lot. And I'm not talking about car batteries either. Like we're willing to plug into some wild ass shit and see if it's going to kill us or not, in many ways. But that's some of the risk we have to take. I mean, it's ironic that, we have people like Benjamin Franklin who threw a key up on a kite in order to understand that the electrical currents that are in our atmosphere do connect, and even to understand electricity itself, right? And of course that comes from above. Sometimes I think we forget that, why is Uranus the ruler of electricity, Aquarius? Electricity comes from above. Lightning comes from above. The skies is what Uranus rules. And so, in many ways, this can also, because it's an air sign, make us so feel like we're up in these very tumultuous, kind of like, almost like if we were in flight in a bunch of turbulence. And this turbulence about the life we live in our personal lives, the world, and all these things are making us feel like, am I going to make it through? Is this all going to be so turbulent here that I'm not going to land okay? And I think that we have to remember that Aquarius is not about the landing. And if it ever is about the landing, it is the cat that always lands on its four paws, right? Like there's always the breakthrough with Uranus. Like Uranus is at least a different way of securing Saturn's kind of like lessons, right? Uranus is like, hey, I'm going to pop the tire on you on the freeway. It's going to suck. There might be a delay. Oh, the lesson is you don't pay attention to if your spare tire is okay all the time. The lesson is you don't have a little kit in the back of your trunk with water or something like that, because you just think there's always somebody there that'll fix it for you, right? But somebody does come, it's uncomfortable, they help out, and that teaches you the lesson, and the breakthrough sometimes comes in a weirder way, right? It's always the thing we're not thinking about, though. And so we have a lot on our minds right now with Mercury and Pisces. It came pre-shadow as it was starting to conjunct the North Node. And on top of that, we have Venus that's with this North Node in Pisces, exalted during this solar eclipse. So there's a lot of things on our mind. There's a lot of things on our plate. There's a lot of things that we're trying to look at in every angle. What's it going to be here? What's it going to be in my finances? What's it going to be for my work life? What's it going to be in my relationships? What's it going to be in this and this and this? And the more that you keep doing that, you create an even harder puzzle to try and figure out. And I think when we go into these charts and when we really take the time to really just take a moment and breathe and remember, hey, this is a wild ride. Let's enjoy the roller coaster here. The things that you're best at, Taurus, are self-worth, and more importantly, the skills that we learn. The ones that we need are going to move into this future realm for us. So it's not like, you're going into this without your tool bag. It's just like an invisible tool bag that just God will place the tools that you already have within you in that bag for when you get there. It's almost kind of like teleportation. Like, don't worry, we're teleporting your tools over into the future when you get there. But I don't get to know which ones? No. Okay. But that's the ultimate test of self-worth. Trusting God to bring you, trusting Spirit to bring you what you need when you get on the other side of all this, and no matter where you end up, that the right things teleport themselves where they need to. And I think that's where this discomfort comes in, wanting to know the answer so much. I can tell you, like Michael Luton always used to say, don't ever with Uranus start saying, this'll be it, because it won't. He used to remind everybody that. And he's right. Whatever you think it is, it ain't. It's the thing you're not thinking about. So if you're thinking about a flat tire on a car trip, it ain't that. Right? Even let's say you're thinking about an accident, it ain't that. It's you ran out of gas. You know what I mean? Like, and there was no gas at the gas station in the middle of nowhere because you just decided, oh, there'll be one up ahead. But it's that, right? It's the thing your mind wasn't thinking about. So every answer that we're trying to understand right now about our lives, where everything's going to sit, whatever you think it is, it ain't. The unpredictability rate is at the highest level. As an astrologer, I would say, like, it can't get any higher than this. Right? I think that even when you look at Mars and Pluto being in Aquarius for this eclipse, the square from Mars is starting to build to Uranus, right? So there's a lot of intensity here. That's why, I actually think that this whole kind of image that I used, it is that way. It is very intense. There is no subtlety to things. There is no calmness in many ways. But in many ways, this is kind of the wake up that we've been wanting. So it's going to be a wild ride. So I'm going to go into the chart stuff now. Do I have that one on here? No. It's so crappy. Like this. I'm always on the betas of everything Apple, and they just are not having fun with. I'm not at the studios. It rained so crazy today. Wasn't even worth going on the roads. But number two, it was just like my house, like the backyard, like the pool was overflowing. It was crazy today. So I'm doing this at my house. So give me, well, we'll use another 3D chart here. What's that one I used to use? It was that. Plus, you know what? Let's check in on 3i Atlas, because believe it or not, as I've always said, it'll be March when 3i Atlas pops off its true message to us. It's been out of the news a lot, but it's definitely getting very close to Jupiter. What was the name of that site? Found it. Perfect. All right. We are good to go. I'm hoping this thing works. Yeah, it does. So here we are, February 16th, and looking at a heliocentric chart 3-dimensionally. Now, I think what's important about this chart to remember is, from an Earth point of viewpoint here, when you look at that Saturn-Neptune, there's that Earth, Saturn, Neptune, and I'll make this easy for people to see here. Man, this is not the easiest thing. But here we will show you from a helio-based chart, but really it's a 3D solar system chart. I wonder if I can do this. I think I can. Yep. Allow. Thank you. All right. So, is it not? Yeah, it is. So you could see the Earth, Saturn, Neptune. There's that Neptune and Saturn conjunction getting ready to happen, right? From Earth's point of view. See that above my head here. Zoom off. Oh, God. I won't use that zoom ever again. That's stupid. But really, it's right here. Wow, even that, man. This thing is just having a fucking field day with me. Yeah, so we have that brewing as the solar eclipse is happening. And that's actually the look that you want to see. Now, from Earth's point of view, this is what I've been predicting. I've been waiting for 3i Atlas. Let's bring that closer here. There we go. I've been waiting for 3i Atlas to come between the Earth and Jupiter, right? So even though Earth is separating from Jupiter, right? Of course, we saw the sun opposite Jupiter with all those big oppositions back when we were in Capricorn at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. But I've been waiting for this. So let's just move the days here. And so as we start to really come into play here, during the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, that's after this eclipse, February 20th, that's pretty damn close for Earth. The days that follow, look at this. That alignment is getting so close. And technically, if this is correct, I would say right about there. Yeah, that's pretty damn close. February 25th into 26th. That's 3i Atlas coming literally to the degree of the exact placement of where Jupiter is in the sky. Of course, 3i Atlas in declination has gone south. It's gone coupled. It's not at the exact same ecliptic plane as the planets as much anymore. It's gone actually lower. It started up above, but there's plenty of telescopes looking at Jupiter right now, and there's going to be some sort of message that comes through here, just like Galileo back in the Starry Messenger days. So I think also there's some really interesting energy that comes by the end of this week on the 22nd. And I'll show you from a helio point of view, 3D wise, we are going to have a conjunction, a triple conjunction, and it's a rare one, with Saturn and Neptune, and it's going to be with Venus. So if you see right here, above my head here, you're going to see Venus, Saturn, and Neptune all come into alignment. I'll show you that in the helio chart as we get into this. All right, so let's get out of that now. And let's get to the charts here. All right, let's get rid of that. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's start with the solar eclipse that's happening at 28 degrees of Aquarius. It's happening literally at 4:01 a.m. Pacific and 7:01 a.m. Eastern on the 17th. We see the solar eclipse here at 28 degrees of Aquarius in 49 minutes. It's within a little over a degree in square to Uranus here at 2732 of Taurus. But we do have that Mars and Pluto that are sitting in Aquarius at the same time. We see Venus and the North Node exactly conjunct. So to me, this is really interesting because Venus is dispositing Uranus being there, and then Uranus is dispositing the solar eclipse. Also, we have that mutual reception happening with Saturn being in Aries with Mars, right? So they'd rather swap, so that gives us a much better energy. You can actually see that right here with me. If you were just to look at Saturn, you can see Mars is mutually recepting to Mars with Saturn, right? So the way that I read this is, well, a lot of it about Aquarius, right? Like everything's really dispositing back to Aquarius. One thing now that Neptune's out of Pisces, that's not the final dispositor anymore in the hierarchy tables, right? With Neptune that was in Pisces from 2011 all the way just up until just weeks ago. You know, you have to remember that everything always, pretty much in every chart for the last 15 years, it always, Neptune being in its home sign and being an outer planet, everything always would, that would be the final say as dispositorship. That's not the play at all anymore. Which kind of makes us come back to the normal way of things are. And what it does in this case is you go, all right, well, Neptune is in Aries, but you know what? That's dispositing Pisces, and what Venus is exalted in Pisces. So that actually is the interesting point here. And Jupiter, of course, is another exalted planet here. And the moon happens to be in Aquarius. So if I were to like think about it, you know, looking at the way that things are operating here, Venus is a very big focal point here. It's on the North Node. It is exalted. I do think that this is one to where with Uranus being in Taurus, it's like everything in your life that's so focused on what's breaking down, you have to surrender and let go of that vision. This is Pisces. It's about the spiritual nuggets. It's about the spiritual things. So if you're so focused on the physical right now, that's really going to be your downfall here. Especially this eclipse comes in right before Saturn and Neptune conjunct. So technically, this is the last solar eclipse in 36 years, as we've been in the Saturn-Neptune cycle since June of 1989, and that met in Capricorn back then. I think it's interesting that, you know, it's kind of one of those last moments where it's almost like dynamite that's just like being placed underneath the walls. And before Saturn crosses over Neptune, and Neptune in Aries blows up the walls and all the barriers. But if you're so attached to everything and you're sitting next to the wall, you know, everything's going to come down when the walls come down. So I think that this one, it's a special one because it's one that says, you know, welcome to Aquarius. This is our first solar eclipse in Aquarius since Pluto has made its ingress since 2023 and the beginnings of the ingress. Have not had any eclipses in Aquarius since going back to 2018. Ironically, that was Uranus's ingress into Taurus. So there was a lot of eclipses actually back in 2018, even like the lunar eclipse that was happening in Aquarius that was with Mars retrograde. So this is also an interesting one because it's a solar eclipse and Mars is not retrograde, and the squares to Uranus then were much more difficult. This is a North Node eclipse, and it's a North Node solar eclipse. So this is the better of the eclipses. And I think that this one definitely is saying your life is definitely being distributed into multiple different directions. It's all being flipped upside down. And that's happening for a reason, because Saturn and Neptune at the 0 degree and about to finally make their big conjunction and start a whole entire new Saturn-Neptune cycle in the days that follow this. Without you having full understanding of it, it's all fragmenting because all the pieces that need to be and where they're going to go are going to happen above your pay grade. They're above your understanding. The big lesson here is to spiritually allow yourself to go through this, right? So if you're afraid of the roller coaster, you're afraid of the ride, or if you just keep looking back, oh, I should have made this choice different. I should have made that different. It's more about what you're going to be doing moving forward, right? Like, stop looking back. Part of Neptune leaving Pisces and Saturn, you've had plenty of time to reflect. If this is just accepting, embracing for the shock. Embracing for whatever happens, I know it's going to bring it to a higher vibration in my life. It's going to lighten the load. It's also going to create pathways that we're not seeing. It reminds me of like a hidden kind of like door that was like a hidden secret door that we couldn't see in a video game or something, you know? And I think that it's one that with Chiron being in Aries and having Mars in Aquarius, having Saturn, Neptune in Aries here, right? Like the ego is the problem. I've been saying this to a lot of people on High Vibe. I put some stuff here on YouTube recently, or I did a thing on Instagram the other day. The problem is when you make these big decisions in Pisces with Saturn, they always don't work out. Because your ego then, what the problem is with Saturn and Neptune about to meet in Aries here, and we have Chiron there too, the ego is going to get pissed because of control. Right? Like you think you've been in control of everything. And this is also what the Aquarian energy is doing too. It's making you really go, man, I really don't have full control of everything. And so when you make these big choices and you think that, you know, this is the best for me, it's really your ego convincing the soul, I know what's best for you. And anytime your ego tries to convince your own soul what's best, it's wrong. And so I think where it's going to be the most frustrating is for people who make choices where they've been putting themselves first. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that they've been pushing the whole narrative of Saturn's in Aries, Neptune's in Aries. You need to put your soul and yourself first. It's kind of hard when, number one, it's North Node in Pisces. You have to be empathetic. We have to be soul-based, which, sorry, it's we're all here, we're all souls, and the only experience we have to even understand that we have a soul is because there are other people on this planet to reflect us, to allow us to know that. And I think that's what's so interesting about this Venus North Node conjunction during this eclipse. It's also an eclipse in Aquarius, right? This is about who do we advance together forward with. The square to Uranus is definitely when you put your own values ahead of everybody else's, well, then nobody wants to partner. Nobody wants to value the same things because you're just fighting for your own values. right? So there's got to be give and take. And with Saturn and Neptune now in Aries, the opposite point of that, of the evolutionary point, of course, is 0 right now, Libra. So if you do use draconic astrology, it's kind of interesting because it's like all of us have Saturn and Neptune on this draconic north node in our charts. But it's interesting that like fairness, relationships, justice, the court systems, why do you think every one of us, including me, are so pissed about this Epstein and unfair bullshit? Saturn, Neptune, Aries. So this is the problem, right? There's astrologers telling people, put yourself first. Well, guess what? Everybody on that Epstein list is doing that. Now, why does Saturn fall in Aries? Because it can't control Mars's impulses, and it doesn't want to listen to rules. Doesn't want to listen to the general telling it what to do on the battlefield. It might get its orders. That doesn't mean it follows all of them. And when it comes to fighting Mars, do you think that you can tell a fighter how to fight and throw every punch, use the sword, whether your safety's on or off in this situation? No, you can't. Who you're allowed to connect with and not, how you're supposed to identify yourself, right? Like other people telling you what to do with that. Saturn loses all his control in Aries because the ego is going to fight it. And at the same time, there's too many things that you can't identify that stay identified the same way. I mean, the word retard, for example, used to be a normal word. But everybody has now defined it as a bad word. And they've connected it to people with physical and mental health issues and developmental issues, when it was actually a word that was a spiritual word of somebody that wasn't retaining things and was going backwards. But there's a lot of old words that, change identity. Saturn can't be the Oxford Dictionary here. Saturn can't control people's impulses to stay on a certain plan. Now he can in Libra because he uses the law. He uses the courts. He uses the judges. He also has power there because when he is in the 7th house in any chart, he's climbing. When Saturn reaches 0 Aries, that's the ascendant, and that's where it falls. And you have to start all over. That you have to look at the Saturn, Neptune, Aries with this eclipse, because even though they haven't conjuncted by this eclipse, that everybody's having to start over. It's a reset. Because when Saturn crosses your ascendant, that's when he falls from grace. And he also is not being able to be seen in a chart. So we can use this chart as a good example. For me, being on the West Coast, when the solar eclipse happens, I can't see it because it's happening below the horizon. The other thing is that Saturn will not be out. Well, Saturn likes to be seen at night. But when he's in your own personal chart and he's traveling through the 1st house, it's always below the horizon, right? That idea. So that's why Saturn falls there. That's why Saturn exalts in the 7th and he is at home in the 10th and the 11th. Those are the areas where Saturn does great. Saturn does great in the 8th. Saturn does great in the 11th and the 12th. Saturn does horrible in the first 6 signs because it's below the horizon. And the understanding of clockwork, timing. The hardest part of life is when Saturn crosses your ascendant. It's not till it reaches the bottom of your chart that finally things start to come back together and you start to move up again, because Saturn's a climber. Now, we all went through the big climb, 2020, and this last 6 years has been a shit ton. This is also the end that will be this week of this eclipse and Saturn-Neptune's conjunction. That will be the end of the conjunctional astrology that began in 2020. 6 years straight of major planetary conjunctions with major bodies, outer planets, Saturn, Jupiter. So I think it's important for people to realize, like, it's good to have a healthy visionary aspect in life. But when you're starting to make your choices based upon your ego and the vision of the ego overpromises and sells less than it can. That's why people like hate egos, right? Because they say they're going to do this, or why everybody's a narcissist now, right? That's just what everybody says. Everybody calls everybody a narcissist, right? Like, they said they were going to do this and then they didn't. They're a narcissist. Well, because the ego always oversells what it can deliver. And with Neptune being on this Saturn, especially the fact that this is an approaching conjunction that approached this close last year and didn't do it. Retrograded both together, didn't do it. That this eclipse is breaking apart all these things that you thought, this is going to happen in my life. This is going to be where it's going to be. And this goes back to, you could use any timetable you want, as far back as I can remember, of whatever you thought your life would look like. That's all being wiped away. Bye-bye. That we're all going to have to see things completely in a new, different direction. And that's why, whether you want to use, like, look at the world with AI today, look at the world when it comes to, well, I mean, I was able to predict that. I told you that all the alliances would break apart with Uranus and Taurus. Like, everything, this is the chart that just says, everything that's on this kitchen table, just flip the table, and all the cups full of water and all the food and everything just goes everywhere. And at the same time, it's musical chairs. While it's playing the most eccentric music on the background. Like, you're like, well, we're playing musical chairs to fucking some badass metal. All right, cool. That'll make a lot of people uncomfortable, that scene. But that's actually what this is. And this is just the way we're entering into this new vibe. So this solar eclipse, look, if you have any placements, of course, at the end of fixed signs, or where this, of course, sits in your natal chart, of course, solar-wise too. Because that's where the flipping of the script, which I would say that's another way to put this is the flip of the script. This is where you didn't know that the studio had another screenwriter who wrote a different version of the script completely, and that the director is not happy with the direction, Saturn, of what its ego wanted in the picture, Neptune, and going, get the backup writer, and you're the writer. Like, what? You had a backup writer who wrote a completely different script with the characters, different names, different attitudes. The shots are going to look different. The whole story, but it's got a similar vibe. What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, by the way, you can go back to your trailer and we'll see you later. We don't need your script no more. That's what this eclipse is. I would say that story is more relevant to the more attached you are to the outcomes. All right, so let's take a look now. And let's move this. I'm going to move this a couple hours forward, and then we'll move to the days of this week. Of course, we come to 29 degrees of Aquarius right after this eclipse in the morning. And so just on the 17th, we already are, with the moon finally going to come into Pisces, and we have a lot of Pisces. I mean, we just got out of a lot of Pisces, and then now we're in a lot of Pisces. We got Mercury here, we got Venus here, we got the North Node, we got the Moon. And still a lot of Aquarius, but if you notice, all these planets are all within 180 degrees, right? So the other way to look at this too is that this is just compact central. Because if you go out from Jupiter and Cancer, everything's within less than 180 degrees. So everything in the zodiac right now is just on one side, and there's a lot of empty space here. So, I was just on an actual 2-hour call today with Michael Erloine, and him and I were talking about helioastrology and some awesome things. And, we were talking about all of his work with helioastrology, all of his work with understanding local space and understanding how to look at charts and the space that's in the charts. And there's just so much to learn. And by the way, he's doing readings right now, which he is the Lifetime Achievement Award astrologer that's alive today. So if you guys want to get a reading from Michael Erlewine, definitely get one. It's a very rare opportunity right now. And you can go to like his website, spiritgrooves.net or michaelerlewine.net, but find him on Facebook and hit him up. But when there's a lot of empty space, he was talking to me today, and actually he used the word angst. There's a lot of angst, and I agree with that. Right? There's a lot of like anxiety. Because it's, one thing I could tell you, because I've had massive anxiety when I was going through my Saturn return, stuff like that. I had panic disorder, I had agoraphobia. And agoraphobia is a fear of wide open spaces. Now, many people don't go through that anxiety, but subtly, this is what's happening in the background of humanity right now, is there's all these new open energies and space that needs to be filled that we have never been to before. And that's what all this open space really means. I mean, we have a lot of open space in the helio chart too, which we'll get to at the end. But I want to remind people that there's a lot of open energy here to go towards, and there's a lot of angst that comes with it. But there's also the positive, is that there's the will to want to go into this energy. And I think that that's still with people too. So, it's battling the mental aspect of it, the angst, the anxiety, but also at the same time, the determination, the willingness, and the excitement to go have that thirst that you want to experience life. And in many ways, that we've been waiting for this moment, but it's kind of like you got to wait again. So the solar eclipse happens, and we're kind of waiting for Saturn, Neptune, which of course is just days away. But it's even like not just that. Like we got to wait for Uranus to come into Gemini for things to really pop off. And really by, the end of April, I feel like we're going to be on go, go, go. We have to remember that Jupiter is retrograde. So it's the only planet retrograde, and it doesn't come direct until we see that lunar eclipse time. So that's a couple weeks away. But I want to remind people that there's a lot of this energy. We're also going to be at 29 degrees of Aquarius here and getting ready to come into Pisces season. And so we have the anaretic degree of the sun in Pisces. We also see that sun in Pisces beginning to semi-sextile the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So we'll go to that right now. We're going to see that as we come into Pisces here. We come into Pisces on Wednesday, February 18th, and we see that sun actually semi-sextile Saturn-Neptune. So there's a bit of a blind spot there. I've always looked at the semi-sextile, the 30-degree angle, as a blind spot, especially if you use mirrors like on a car. Right? It's the sign over, you can't really see. It's easier to see a 60-degree angle. There's actually, if you were to use a mirror and bounce 60 degrees off, you can see 30 degrees, why we need our little blind spot mirrors. Or sometimes objects can appear closer than they really are. But the idea here is that if you even see from just the midpoint of the sun here as it comes into Pisces, and this is now dispositing Neptune in Aries, right? So it was interesting because it was March 31st, 30th into 31st when we were in Aries season when Neptune ingressed into Aries. So the sun has not come in to Pisces yet with Neptune in Aries in our lives, right? Last time would have been at the end of the early 1870s when the Neptune and Aries transit finished after 1861 when it made its ingress into Aries. So what does this mean? That this Pisces season is like one we've never felt before. It's also a North Node in Pisces. So last year, the North Node was not in Pisces. So we haven't felt this for 19 years. Right? Going back to 2007. Which was the precursor to the Great Recession. It's also the precursor to Pluto ingressing into Capricorn by 2008. But as we see, we're going to have this North Node, the Sun, we have Venus, we have the Moon, we have Mercury, right? All in Pisces. Now remember, it was, 2013? The most amount of planets in one sign we had was in Pisces. There's a little bit of that echo beginning. So there's an echo to the big transit where there was like 7 planets in Pisces back in 2013. And that makes it even weirder that we just went through a solar eclipse. We squared Uranus. We were in all this Aquarius energy, and then it just dumps into Pisces and sits it between and waiting for Saturn and Neptune, which is very much feeling paralyzed. Saturn and Neptune, right, is also paralyzation. I'm surprised nobody ever brings that one up. Right? Because Saturn wants to be determined. It wants to be and understand what the goal is and understand the next step. And Neptune is like, it's got its back turned. Aleister Crowley wrote the best book about Neptune. Neptune's back is turned to the sun. And its back is turned to Saturn. Right? Like try and get a Pisces to get the attention of a Pisces. It's only when they want to have the attention, right? Because like Neptune has got its back turned. It's always looking way out into the universe. And so there's this feeling of like paralyzation, like we're paralyzed. What do we do here? After a radical flipping of the script in our life and all the pieces that don't make sense and how they're going to come together. And that's this Wednesday, as we're just coming into the Saturn Neptune by the 20th. Like this is not going to feel like a yay. If anything, with Mercury that's in pre-shadow and Mercury going pretty slow, Mercury actually is starting to slow down. It's doing 1 degree in 6 minutes by this Wednesday. By the time that we get to the end of the week, just in the it's already going to be doing less than half a degree. Let's also not forget that it's also the Chinese New Year on this solar eclipse. I forgot to bring that up. Of course, the fire horse. It's actually happening on a day where it's triple fire. It's like a fire hour, a fire day. I think it's the fire dog. But, the horse, yeah, it definitely wants to get going and move. But, it reminds me of, oh, man. I'm going to show it, too. I know this is going to piss people off because, everybody's been pumping up this Chinese New Year. But it will take a rat like me to do the opposite. Oh, The Ring. Does everybody remember that movie, The Ring? The Ring and the horse blood at the boat. Oh, horse blood. Gosh, what was that thing on? It was on the boat. Yeah, the horse death. The horse going off the side of the boat and becoming. Yeah, that's it right here. In the movie The Ring, the horse, it gets destabilized and it just starts leaping and jumping. And what is it doing right now? Back away, lady. What is going on? Oh my God. This is what the fire horse is doing. This is what everybody is going to go try and do right now. I got to go here. No, wait, I got to go there. What's going on? This horse, okay, this is why the horse did not win the race, by the way. And this horse is coming, and it's going to go off the side of the boat. Saturn, Neptune, before, like this, boom. So you better be prepared. You don't need to rush. That's the dumbest thing. Remember, the rat is what we came into this whole conjunctional astrology, and then the blood. I'll never forget this. This was the creepiest part. 2006, back in the day when this movie came out. There it is. Oh, bye-bye, horsey. Oh, that's... I know that nobody in the world has showed anybody this and even put that out there. Everybody just pump. I hate all the astrologers out there. Pump it. Let's pump up. Let's just pump it up to get people fucking say, are you kidding me? It comes in and then this happens? All this paralyzed energy, and it's like the horse not knowing and freaked out, and what the hell is going on here? Saturn and Neptune. Saturn is maritime, especially with Neptune. But the part is that we came into the 2020 rat year, right? What? The rat uses its mind. It thinks, and that's why it wins the race. Not the horse that does not think. It's impulsive and it just goes. And so this is not go time. I know it looks like it. This is eclipse time. Do you really have control? That's going to be the other thing. Is Saturn on Neptune is the illusion that you have control. I'm going to ride this horse bareback and we're going to go, you're on a boat, motherfucker. That's why it was tied up. But people just I want to do this now. And that's where the veil, this Pisces, is pumping, dispositing Neptune and Aries. I want to move. I want to do this. I think I have control. No, you don't. So to me, it's almost like the eclipse happens and then we're going to get some world shattering information after it. And it's going to be how you react to things. And it's about not reacting. Let's wait till Saturn, Neptune conjunct. All this Pisces. I mean, if you just think of the midpoint between the sun and Saturn, right? It's where the moon is going to be. It's going to be emotional. And that moon's going to be in trine to Jupiter. And it's not going to be the emotional yay fest that everybody's expecting. Let's not forget, Black Moon Lilith is in opposition to Uranus this whole time and making a T-square to Mars. This is not, even this solar eclipse too. This is not gonna go well for the ones that are driving so fast. And I think that boat analogy is great, right? The horse is on the fucking boat, just like the cars. You can't drive the car off the boat. Neither can you drive the horse off the boat. And so Neptune is just getting disposited by all this in Pisces, and it's got this Mars that's in Aquarius and just ready to go. I want to break free. Well, then you need to understand when the right moments come and when the basics. That's Pluto. Like, okay, well, the horse can't get on anywhere until we get on the land. Well, we're on no land. We are in far, if you just take this idea of where Saturn and Neptune are all the way to Pluto, I mean, that's basically the whole zodiac except for Uranus and Jupiter. And remember, everything's within less than 180 degrees. And Uranus is where the land is, right? Taurus. And it's in square. You got to wait till the right pieces put themselves together. But I'm telling you, everybody's going to, fire horse, here we go. Fucking jump off that fucking boat. It's going to be, personally, I'm going to think it's funny as an astrologer, but I'm not happy about it because I know that a lot of people are falling for that already right now in their lives. All right, so this is going to be Thursday, the 19th, the day before Saturn-Neptune conjunct. And this is really interesting because we see the moon ingress into Aries and it conjuncts Saturn and Neptune. So we're going to see a big stellium at 0 degrees. And so this is really interesting because it's this moon crossing over Saturn and Neptune with just only 4 minutes before their conjunction. And to me, this is like almost kind of like the moon going, I thought they were conjunct and reporting back to everybody. Not yet. So this goes with this whole kind of notion that this eclipse, it's shifting everything. Everything's going all over the place. But then, oh shit. The moon, even by just days after, is just crossing over like they haven't met yet. Remember that last year this happened too. So it's going to bring up a lot of this feeling of like, I'm not waiting anymore. When you should. Saturn's about patience. Neptune's about long-term spiritual patience. So this is where you're going to see people like not know how to handle anything really in their life because they don't know how to trust spirit and go when spirit has arrived with things. And we are in the farthest out, widest part of the zodiac and just way out there. Right? And you're trying to define everything with so many different variables that are happening right now. And so the other thing I think that's going to come is this massive kind of fear that you're never going to get what you want. And I think that this is where the illusion is pumping with Mercury in Pisces at its fall. It's starting to slow down. Now it's doing 58 minutes, right? Venus is here. So we saw Mercury, Venus, of course, in Aquarius. When we saw Venus cross over Mercury, or Mercury cross over Venus. Now this is Venus crossing over Mercury coming up. Like, it's almost kind of like the events since the Mercury retrograde in Sag, which was, right, coming into after Halloween. This whole fall period that came into winter is like coming all back up. Like, what were you doing when all that stuff was in Pisces back and retrograding back and all that? It's like, you just want out. But the universe is like, hold on. I feel like this is a week where the universe is like, what are you doing? Because you don't want to end up like that horse flying off the boat. But the ego is going to be very pissed. I emotionally want this now. It's not happening. My soul deserves this. It's almost like the ego is trying to hijack the soul and almost like, I'm here to protect the soul, right? It's like, oh God. Especially when Saturn has no idea what it's in. It's at the start of the chart, 0 degrees, Aries. But there's Neptune. So it's like, even Saturn's like, please don't. But, can you ever try and tell somebody, no, don't? No. What I've noticed as an astrologer is people come back years later when you tell them, no, don't do that. They do it in their chart and then they come back 2 years later, dude, you were right. So let's look at the actual conjunction now. Now, we see Saturn and Neptune conjunct on February 20th at 8:54 a.m. Pacific at 11:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are finally into a new cycle of Saturn and Neptune. The one that was prior was all the way back. November 13th was the last version of it, but there was more. The first one of it, there was a retrograde, of course, on June 23rd, 89, and then on March 3rd, 1989 was the first conjunction. It was with the moon in Capricorn, too. Now, if you think about it, the illusion we just lived through the last 36 years was like that the corporate world was going to really make everything work out good. Ironically, the eclipses we're in now are the same as the Great Recession. That was a big lie. If you use the Epstein files, all these people in political power, corporate power, and all that shit are all in the Epstein situations. So really, the Saturn Neptune is the illusion of whatever the structure is that's being sold to you. And right now, the illusion that's being sold to you, now that it's in Aries, is your ego, your life. You do what you want to do. You do it how you want to do it. I know people are processing that one like a motherfucker right now. Because you guys are all going to end up in the whatever files 30 plus years down the road. This is also the end of 6 years of conjunctional astrology. Since Saturn Pluto, January 12th, 2020. Jupiter Pluto 3 times. Jupiter Saturn. That was all just 2020. Right? Then it was, Jupiter Neptune, Jupiter Uranus. There's been a lot. We're now at the end. So just like the beginning of the transit, which started COVID with the fake fucking, whatever COVID is from just some weird image that China put out on January 12th, 2020. As we come into conjunctional astrology, we exit out with the same energy and craziness. Hence, the smart move is to have your horse in the stable and wait to know what to do. Have an observation of what doors and new starts begin. Because it's kind of the irony is interesting, right? Like the last time that Saturn Neptune met for the first time, the moon was in the same sign as it, almost around the same degree, but it was kind of crazy, right? Like Saturn Neptune met in Capricorn and the moon was in Capricorn. It had just passed it. No, they're not conjunct yet. And then stayed in that sign and then boom, same thing. Now we're not going to get the retrograde conjunction. But of course, the last time that these two planets met at 0 Aries was all the way back in 4361 BC. On March 2nd, Saturn, Neptune, Aries, 0 degree Aries, right? So it's been that 4,361 plus this 2,026. So yeah. 60, almost 6,400 years ago. Now, this is where humanity really starts its history. Even this is pre the Old Testament, pre a lot of our history, all of the prehistory, the prehistoric history. This is like where humanity, the only traces they have is like, I guess these people that lived in this area started to kind of migrate over here. This is where I think that like whatever dropped us off on this planet or if we're from here, but whatever has been in actual higher control of this place kind of like said, okay, move about your little hamster wheel of what you're calling Earth here. Ironically, we're in a similar situation. I want to show one more chart. So the conjunctional astrology aspect of things. So if we go to 1345, when the astrologer told the Pope, hey, there's going to be a huge fucking Black Death, right? Which did happen. 1347, 1348, half the population died on the planet. And it was because there was an astrologer smart enough to understand conjunctional astrology and understand, look at how much space is in the chart. Look at how it was a Mars, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction with the moon. And this was the beginning of a ton of that. right? So Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius. Oh, we had that. The Uranus-Pluto conjunction that had happened prior. No, they didn't know about those two planets. Look at Venus in the south node. The nodes at the, with Venus, ironically. But this was massive conjunctional astrology. Jupiter, Neptune had just happened prior. So this was the ending of another long conjunctional pattern that was happening. So when you go to 1347, I know I'm going to trigger the world right now, but that's what I do. You go to 1346. Oh, okay. Well, Uranus is separating from Pluto. Saturn separating from Neptune. Saturn-Neptune had happened. So let me just take people back for a second. Saturn-Neptune already done. That was Mars, Pluto, Jupiter. Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, right? That was what created it. It was those three that were in that old astrology of conjunctional astrology that caused pandemics, especially, of course, they call them plagues. If you go to the year prior, it's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aquarius, where Pluto is now. So watch this. If I do this, do Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Back then, 1344, Saturn-Neptune conjuncted at 1 degree and 56 minutes of Aquarius. And there was Jupiter. We went through all these same transits. Jupiter-Neptune, Saturn-Jupiter, Saturn-Neptune. Right? The end of all of it was when Mars finally did it. And so, ironically, what's coming up? I'm going to bring us back now. Well, let's finish the whole 1347. By 1347, when Mars comes back around, it's coming over the degree of where Saturn-Neptune was. Saturn's now in Pisces. And then you go in the years ahead, 1349, by the time Saturn comes in Aries, right? It'll be the Saturn-Pluto, it'll be the Saturn-Uranus. But ironically, those aren't the years of the Black Death. Let me do this. The whole point was like the conjunctional astrology, the understanding of it, and to pay attention, right? So if we do the Black Death years, 1353 is by the end of it, but the peak of it, right? When you start seeing 1347, 1348, 1349, it's reached all over Europe. 1350, everywhere in those higher parts, northern parts of Europe. By 1351, it's now reached into Russia, Poland, and it ends in Russia, right, by 1353. The whole entire process of this happened where Crimea is today, right? So, like, the Crimea part of all this is where the battles were happening. And that's what started it. Look at this. Approximate border between the Principality of Kiev, Ukraine, and the Golden Horde, passage prohibited for Christians by the Mongolian different empires. They had split up into different tribes and ruled all of the Mongolian Empire, the different tribes. And they were coming through here and meeting, and that's where the battles where they were throwing the dead bodies over. So what I mean is that this Saturn, Neptune, and the shock value of things is the world is not going to look like anything that there's been too much being spouted out there. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. This is going to happen. When you're in conjunctional astrology without much open space, and you're having repeats, and you're having tons of energy, and this is the first time since 6,400 years, Saturn, Neptune, 0 Aries, But you're getting a ton of this Aquarius. You're getting a ton of this Aquarius again. You're getting a ton of the Pisces again. You're getting it all in the same area. You're getting it all in the same area. And that, so we'll use that till the end of 1353, right? So 1350, Saturn, Pluto are meeting. They finally conjuncted. 1351, there they are. Then it's Saturn, Uranus. 1352. And then time that it breaks apart with Saturn from Uranus there, that's 1353 and it's over. But let's actually look at the death numbers. The Black Death killed, by various estimations, from 25 to 60% of Europe's population. Writes that as early as 1351, agents of Pope Clement, who was a French pope, who left where the Vatican was and was chilling in France, by the way, calculated the dead in Christian Europe as 23.8 million, with a pre-plague population of about 75 million. Clement's figures accounts for mortality of a 31% rate and about midway between 50% in parts of Tuscany and so forth. So in 1348, the disease spread so rapidly that nearly a third of the European population perished before any physicians or government authorities had time to reflect on its origins. In crowded cities, it was not uncommon for as much as 50% of the population to pass. Florence's tax register suggests that 80% of the city's population died within 4 months of 1348. Before 1350, there were about 170,000 settlements in Germany, and this was reduced by nearly 40,000 by 1450. The disease bypassed some areas. My whole point is the impact of how big of what's about to happen is as big as this. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be this. This is the famous picture that, of course, creates the tarot decks. Ironically, it's the Black Death that helps us with tarot. And this is done 100 years or 200 years after. But it's interesting that a Dutch painter creates this, and every part of the tarot, right? So the Hierophant card and the secret, dark, mysterious things behind the Pope, because the occult knew, the astrologer knew, told the Pope in 1345, the Pope bailed away and survived, and everybody was left to rot, right? So the death card is everywhere. But what you notice about the people, the only people who survive is the Lovers and the Page of Swords. Those are the only two cards. The Page of Swords knows the facts and can understand the astrology and know when to bring the sword out and not, right? And it's swift and it can figure out the right space. The Lovers aren't concerned and they're focused on love, their connection. And we're in a world right now where people throw away relationships like whatever. I don't give a fuck. People are not smart at all. Don't want to pay attention to what's going on anywhere. Every other card you'll see, and you'll see that the dark is ushering all the masses into a coffin under the guise of the same symbol as the church. Here is the King of Wands. Every card is in here. This is where you get the Hangman, of course, who's above. whatever's about to happen takes events like this that comes from the astrology we're about to enter into that create hundreds of years later things like tarot. That it was tarot that helped us try to understand through the story of the Black Death what the fuck the Renaissance was about, life coming back. Because the Dark Ages were the 14th century. The triumph of death. The social upheaval and terror that followed the plague, which devastated medieval Europe. So there's a ton of social upheaval and terror that follows the plague after half of the whole population of Earth dies. And really, when I think of all this Aquarius, and I go back to the astrology of then, and all the Aquarius, yeah. Coming out of this transit, coming out of these conjunctions, all the same big planetary conjunctions that we're exiting with the current one that we will be. Right? So if I then go here to the one we're coming into, look at how tight the orb is. Same shit. Pluto, here's Jupiter. Okay, so let's just go from the moon to Pluto. Less than 80 degrees? So it's not just about a Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the 0 degree of the start of the astrology chart. It's the fact that everything is compact and the stellium is the whole planetary system we're in. That where we go from here will be chaotic. And to be smart and, react to things in a way that it's like, all right, this wasn't expected. How do I move about this with caution, wisdom, and making sure that my soul is not letting my ego be the horse that just jumps off the fucking boat? Like, let's not forget that this Saturn-Neptune is creating humanity's whole entire next chapter since 6,400 years ago. I hate to say it, but back then too, if you looked back at that chart, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries back in 4361 BC was a grand trine. This one's not. This one doesn't have a good aspect. So the only thing that's actually like making it stronger is the fact that Mars is in a mutual reception with Saturn in Aquarius, meaning it's going to be chaotic. 2, that all those planets in Pisces are dispositing Neptune, and it's Mercury in its fall. It's Venus in its exaltation. It's a North Node. It's Rahu. That we all are wanting and desiring some magical story here, when it's more of a hard reality check of. So the other part of where Saturn wins in this alchemical exchange is, no, the reality is this. So the dreams, the visions don't get met just as much as where Neptune's visions, Saturn can assist with those. So the ones that meet reality can be met. But if you made those choices all in Pisces, it's all the illusion being wiped away. That's why I've been telling people, like, the last year has been the end of all we knew. Or why Ra and human design, right? And the cross of the sleeping phoenix that begins in 2027, and his preparation for everybody to understand their human design, because guess what? The world is going to fall apart. It's going to be about how you survive. We're moving into the 2034 channel. And this is all solar plexus all right here. So in many ways, this is like the starting engine to the cross of the sleeping phoenix, right? Saturn, Neptune in Aries, 0 degree. All that is firing up the solar plexus. It's firing up the emotions. It's firing up an emotional world. It is not clarity, and then I just do this. No. And what does emotional mean? You have to let the waves pass. You have to emotionally process all this shit. And then make sure you're making the move, because that emotion's still coming up, instead of just reacting and jumping onto it. There has to be restraint. You got Chiron in front of all this, right? So this kind of like heroic story that you're creating for yourself, I'm going to be the hero for myself right now, is Chiron going, I'm sorry, I'm not the hero. The fact that Jupiter in Cancer is still retrograde too, it's not popping off any kind of, that this is going to be super, super comfortable at all. Quite the opposite. And the adventure of a life of an emotionally extreme, crazy shift of humanity. I mean, Terence McKenna said it best, right? When he was on mushrooms out in the jungle, that, a species leaving to go to the stars, it's going to be chaotic. There's going to be, bad food. There's going to be just fascism, all the, authoritarianism. I mean, look at people post things online, they get arrested. Look at the Ukraine war. Look at what's happened in Gaza. Look at what's happened everywhere. You think that we're over that? This is just beginning. So the Black Plague, the battles that started in 1346, we're at that point to where it's like those things catch up and start affecting everybody. And that's what's kind of interesting about this, is that we're coming in and bringing all that, and Nostradamus and all of his work, right? It's all based upon the Saturn ingress into Aries. This is a special, and I know that nobody else is going to put it out there, so I will do that for people, because I can't believe what's out there on TikTok and all this bullshit. But I will do it. So let's open the Nostradamus charts, and let's look at his preface to his son. How to predict the whole prophecies. Saturn 0 Aries. This is the preface date he gives his son. Saturn 0 Aries. It's every Saturn Aries and every 7 cycles. This was what I decoded. The one we are entering into with this Neptune tracks on the most extreme events, even if you go backwards from 1555. It tracks on the 7-year, every 7 Saturn and Aries cycles is a reset. Then, of course, understanding the 3 chapters, which he has that go after the 7th, or after the 6th into the 7th, right? Right? The 8th, 9th, and 10th with an X, Roman numerals. Those are the hidden 3, the 3 outer planets, the hidden 3. Robert Flood was drawing about them before they were known. the 3 realms outside of Saturn. To get us to this bigger age and this new age, this is going to be the bumpiest ride we ever went through. But you're going to have to be determined and understand that and not be reactive from the old world ways. Now, what's interesting is when Nostradamus was born was when a lot of the early predictions, right, that he would use of the books that he would burn came. So his own birthday was part of the secret as well, which actually his birthday, of course, is back in the 1520s or 1510s, if I'm right. When was it? It was 15. It's been a minute since I was doing Nostradamus decoding. I think he's under samples here. And they might have him as Michael Nostradamus, but no. Of course, the epistle, when things get good, I'll just show people that real quick, when he shows that, this is when the Republic will show up and positive things and the plagues will end and all that stuff. It is Saturn in Capricorn. It is a completely different chart. It is a moment, actually, when you look deep at this whole one. Oh no, this was the epistle secret chart. So the other chart was this one. Hold on. I know it's been a minute. It was the future, 1732. He gave this date by counting the days astrologically to do it to his son. It's in the preface of Nostradamus' prophecies book. Saturn at 15, and it was the opposition of Pluto exact. I mean, how did this guy get this back in 1555? It was also Jupiter at 0 Libra to counter the negative Saturn 0 Aries points. Always a Mars or a Venus retrograde. And the nodes flipped. There's a lot of really interesting details too. Even that Venus slowing down. We had Venus retrograde in Leo for the first time a couple years back. Stationed at the same place. I mean, like, I can go on for days, and it's Chiron and Taurus that's coming, but not for a while. In 6 degrees of Taurus, right? That's a couple years away. So we're in the middle of it. This is going to be a bumpy ride. I'm not going to bullshit you. Even with all the outer planets making their awesome shit, it's not going to be... Where's his fucking birthday? Do I have him in my chart? Do I have like Nostradamus chilling out here? Fucking... Yeah, or no... Let's preface... How do I... Samples... I thought maybe I had him. Oh, yeah, here he is. 1503. It was 1503. His birth date actually is part of the secret because he's teaching you his Mars-Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which is what the astrologer brought up in 1345. And that it takes some time. If you follow the progressions of when Nostradamus actually throws out his astrology and his ephemerises and his prophecies, it's all very highly connected to his progress chart, ironically. And at the same token, the North Node at 28 Pisces, where Venus was retrograde, and the opposition to the longest Venus-Mars opposition, because that only happens when there's retrogrades of both, that you'll find in any ephemeris was 1555. And ironically, he knew all this stuff, but there's that Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and the prophets of that time, he burned all the books that were from the old astrologers of the 14th century about that. He didn't want people to know about it except in secret. When was our last Mars, Saturn, Jupiter? I will show you right now. And let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do the year. Let's just go like this, and let's go 2020. And there's Jupiter, there's Saturn, there's Mars. And let's just do that by the days. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. And ironically, they were all in Capricorn, and then you watch the transition into Aquarius with that. But there's Mars, Jupiter with Pluto and Saturn. Then there's right there with all within 10-degree orb. Mars, Saturn. Jupiter, Pluto. And that's where you have to look at how we've been looking out towards this moment. Oh my gosh, because that's why I told you all would be the way everything turned out, right? Because it's like you got to see how we looked at it's nothing ahead but Saturn conjuncting Neptune. Jupiter that's going to conjunct Saturn. Jupiter that's going to conjunct Neptune. Jupiter that's going to conjunct Uranus. Right? It had to still come over Pluto. That at that point of March of 2020, I was telling you guys, you're in for a long haul. Nobody wanted to believe me. Well, now you bring us to now. Now you bring us to that conjunction. It's just Saturn looking at Chiron now, and then it's Saturn, Uranus in the years ahead. That's in 6 years. You follow what happened in 1345 and forward, same shit. And I'm not saying it's going to be the Black Death, although it's happening in a lot of the similar spots. I do think it's going to be war, though. And how you're going to have to learn how to rely on yourself away from structures. The structures are coming down. And that's kind of the shock of the Aquarian new age, right? Relying on technology that you probably don't agree with, right? So, you know, as I was talking to Michael Erlewine today, it reminds me of older stories I've had with him when he created Matrix software. And then people thought the computers were soulless, so they wouldn't use it at first. Or when he started making reports that people were crying at like the UACs and stuff, like hall monitors, all these things, because I can't believe astrology's got to a place where they're putting reports out. They're soulless. So when I created AI Astrology 2 years ago with Jim Hull, everybody's like, you guys are, it doesn't work, and nobody wants to look. And everybody's like, no, we will never use that shit. It's soulless. It's the same shit. You guys are just not there yet. So ironically, the quest of this new thing is your ego having to completely deflate what you think. I think that AI astrology is soulless. Okay, whatever your ego wants to say is the Delulu world. I need this. This is bad for me. It's probably not. It's probably good, whatever you think is bad. That the Delulu world has hit its peak. The critical mass now is about to... What happens when you hit critical mass is now everything is going to come out. Everything's going to start pouring itself out. Especially when you're in this tight of orb and there's this much space in the chart. Like, especially if I get rid of Juno and I get rid of the Black Moon Lilith and I get rid of all that shit. And you just look at with all the planets, everything's too close. We are like trapped. But at least with Saturn, it's starting to say, I'm going to open up. I get to kind of get out of this and start to open up. Of course, it's got Uranus there ahead, which we'll see a nice sextile again this year. that sextile's over. So a lot of people bought the whole Saturn and Pisces sextile to Uranus and Taurus. Like, I'm already planting myself kind of in the soul of where I think is the best place for me. And it's like, that's all Neptune's erasing all that. So Saturn has to reset at 0 Aries and has to reset every setting and be like, oh, am I stupid? Now we just move the day to Saturday. Moon is still in Aries. Mars, 22 degrees here. We're not seeing crazy stuff. We do see Mars by Sunday finally get a sextile to Chiron here. Interesting dispositing again, but I think this is going to be where, as the sun is getting closer to the North Node, and we do see Mercury doing only 34 minutes on Sunday. It's almost getting ready for its retrograde, starting to slowly station, and you see Jupiter doing the same, only doing 3 minutes, and we start to see that moon in Taurus, the sun in Pisces. It's us having to get a grip with what's stirring, what's spiritually going on, and there's a lot of confusion. That's why you shouldn't be running your horse. You need to really go, what's happening here? You're planning for 6,400 years in advance of your life. You're not planning for next month. You're planning for the rest of humanity that we know it. And this is where you can throw 3i Atlas in. You could throw Aquarius events, things in the sky, a lot of hidden deception stuff coming up in Pisces, and this Aries having to learn to deal with what you thought your ego was supposed to see, and it's just being torn down. And that's what's going to be the reveal to the new beautiful world at the end of all this stuff. We got a while, got months, because Pisces ain't over. The sun's there, the North Node's there. We have a lunar eclipse in Virgo coming. We got Venus there, but more importantly, we got a Mercury retrograde coming. Remember, during that whole March of 2020, when all that stuff was happening, Mercury retrograded in Pisces, and the idea of a lockdown was because of the Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And the quickness of how fast that stuff happens. We're going to be facing a lot of this stuff. I don't think it's until this Monday, the 23rd, when Saturn goes to leaves 0 and leaves Neptune and gets to 1 degree, the moon being in Taurus to conjunct Uranus and Mars in square, and now we're starting to see Mars within a 3-degree orbit of that square to Uranus. Like the shocks are going to keep coming, but they'll be different. There'll be shocks of like us really trying to understand how to structure ourselves and looking after we've forged the river and that cattle fell down the river, this fell off, and you picking yourself back up and just taking it a step at a time here. The more you rush, the worse, especially with Mars and the approach to a square to Uranus. You could do more harm than good the more that you're rushing towards something. And Mercury is going to rethink everything in Pisces. So we're kind of being pulled apart. Like, I'm trying to go here, but was that Mercury's like, hold on. No, Mercury will be doing 25 minutes. Jupiter's still retrograde, right? I mean, the transit-wise, you really don't start seeing anything really that exciting-wise as far as like good aspects. We see Venus trying Jupiter. But I feel like that almost in a way is a reminder. It's uncomfortable, and I have to surrender to this higher spiritual thing instead of the physical. That the comfort is not lying in the physical. And I think that's going to disrupt this moon exalted here in Taurus, right? Like, with Uranus there, it's like it's not comfortable. There is nothing to really hold on to here except for the essence, North Node Pisces, and your ego and all of its heroic stuff it's been telling you to get you through the Pisces transit of the last, with Saturn. Let's not forget that Saturn and Neptune were in Pisces the whole time and never met. So the whole Saturn transit of 3 years. Now it's going to be in Aries the whole time that Saturn's in Aries. you're not done with Saturn and Neptune. The fact that it's happening at 0 degrees means, oh man, we're going to still have Neptune with Saturn for 2.5 more years. The same thing happened during the Black Death at 1 degree of Aquarius. Long Saturn Neptune in Capricorn, ironically, like we had the last one. But that, of course, then it actually meant in Aquarius. This one was, okay, they were in Pisces. They were right next to each other, but they never met. Now it's in Aries. Now we got to go the whole next part of a whole Saturn cycle in a sign where Nostradamus predicts all of the biggest things, and we're in that cycle. The 1937 cycle hit, and that's what created World War II. Now count how many Saturn and Aries have been since that. 3. We're in the 10th. We're in the X. That's why you're seeing X everywhere. Why was I telling people the X would show up before X did everywhere? I think the positive out of all this is if we look at the helio and also if we take a look at just like this deeper understanding here of like, hey, it's never been your ego. That's why Saturn falls there. Right? Right? The Civil War happened with Neptune at 0 Aries, and also the invasion of the Incan Empire by the Spanish. And King Henry VIII leaving the Catholic Church, the schism. I can go on and on and on. Right? It's not your ego going to get what you want unless you're invading, which I'm sure you don't want to do, and there comes a lot of cost with that invasion. But the irony of prehistory of Saturn Neptune 6,400 years ago was people started migrating, and which people around the world started moving and which ones didn't. And the ones that moved were all from the northern parts of Europe down into Europe. Ironically, where they found the guy with all the gold, when it makes no sense, there's no gold mines, and he was just wearing nothing but gold, and he's 6,400 years old, was where Ukraine and Bulgaria and stuff is today. So the hot zone is Ukraine area. It is where Chernobyl happened, where the Black Death happened, the battles for that. World War II, Stalingrad. They don't remind you that Stalingrad was a USSR. They've renamed it areas now that you would not know. Same spaces where all of the Black Death happened and all the weird shit. And where the Ukraine war is today. And a battle that's happening with Russia there. So, this is going to be a very confusing Pisces season because you're torn between the future and the future. You're torn between trying to put together your future and then this identity that's having to, in Aries now, past Neptune, get out of the fog and realize it's barren. Like there's really not, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted. And so you're going to see a lot of people try and renege backwards. Like, what do you mean? And that's what Mercury's starting to slow down and getting ready for the retrograde in Pisces. It's going to be rethinking all this with Venus again. And ironically, Mars, we know is dispositing all that Aries, but it's in mutual reception to Saturn. Where's the next Mars-Saturn conjunction with Neptune? Oh, it's in Aries in like a month and a half. And that's going to bring up the Saturn-Neptune, and that's going to bring up all this energy. Won't be Jupiter, although Jupiter, ironically, of course, we're still finishing by sign the square. We don't see the trine until Jupiter comes into Leo. So if you notice, there's no awesome quintiles, there's no awesome biquintiles, there's no, you know, ironically, like the way I could put it is like there's nothing really kind of here to kind of save the day. And anything that's putting itself out there to save the day is a lie. Right? So like the false heroes are going to pop up, Saturn, Neptune, Aries. Right? Like this is where, you know, somebody's going to say, I'm the hero, I'm going to fix everything, and everybody's going to fall for it. This warms up the weirdest stuff, whether Project Bluebeam stuff, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's going to get more intense as we get into March. But you just, this is the week where it never looks the same ever again. You have to be okay with being on this kind of like suspended platform that you don't know what level it's going to land. You're on an elevator that you don't know if it's going up or down. Right? And it's moments like this that make you, with all this Pisces, go into that place of like, my God, it's going to force people to actually pay attention to their soul and their spirituality instead of their ego, instead of, you know, I've got it all figured out. Pluto is very seductive. So people fell for the seduction of all those planets crossing over Pluto in Aquarius, right? Like your future could look like this. Your future, while everything was still in Pisces, like, oh yeah. You know, and so, you know, and the North Node's in Pisces, like you're going to have compassion. You're going to have to do the best that you can for that, but also like, where are the boundaries with Saturn? Where are the rules? What really protects those boundaries? With Neptune, they're dissolved. And so there's kind of this moment here of like, am I stupid if I do this? Is that safe? Is it not safe? There's nothing safe. All there is like you having to trust spirit more than you ever have. And I think that's where that Venus exalted there in Pisces is going to be your best friend, right? Like learn to love. Or like I showed you the Lover's card in the Triumph of Death painting that created tarot. Like the Lovers and the Page of Truth is the only two cards that have any viewpoint of what's going on. And ironically, the Lovers aren't looking at the whole scene. And the Page of Truth is looking exactly at where the Pope and his fake kind of like spiritual thing is, and the ego and this kind of propagated spiritual thing. Because remember, like, the Pope knew and didn't tell the world. And that's supposed to be the voice of God, and sat in France with 2 fires next to him and didn't let anybody get next to him while everyone died. I wish I could give a much more brighter forecast. I think the brighter forecast is definitely as we get through all this shit and we get to the end of April. And really, I think it's going to be May, June, into July being where we can really start to make sense of all of this in our lives. I think this is going to be the messiest period we've ever been through that just begins. And I think that all of the rest of February, all of March, and most of April is going to be the messiest period we've ever seen in our life. This is us trying to regain. We're being forced to kind of like, your conjunctions are done. What? And the force of what the last 6 years is coming extreme, and how that's going to make people feel. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of resentment, choices that people made. That's the other thing with Neptune, guilt. Why did I do this? And then there's going to be people who are like, I don't feel bad at all. Fuck you. I'm the Confederacy. We're going to go. Keep the slaves. It's that gnarly. Ain't a joke. I can't believe people are just throwing this out as a joke. Selling fantasies. Be careful of Saturn on Neptune. Don't ever sell a fantasy on that shit. Look at does anybody even remember anything worth having in 89? No. Saturn Neptune years don't bring anything that you go, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, like, you know, even the metal bands and the, you know, it's like, yeah, like, sorry, that just wasn't the music videos and the long hair were just like, ugh. So I'm going to show you the Helio as we come to this now. And I know people are I haven't even read the chat. I'm just like putting this out there for people. I think the main thing is that you stop giving your own power away to this kind of following what the world does. So here's the crazy conjunction that's very rare in Helio. Venus is going to come in conjunct Neptune and Saturn, and we're going to see it all 1, 2, 3. If you see, there's a lot of space in the chart, but, you know, Earth being that it's going to be coming into Virgo, of course. I'm looking at Monday, of course, if we were to kind of bring it back to Leo, but it's still done with that opposition. We had the Sun-Pluto conjunction, geo-wise. You know, to me, it's interesting seeing, you know, we're actually going to start this week with Mercury Uranus, which is happening during the eclipse. And by the time that it's over this week, it's Mercury in Cancer, 14 degrees. That's how fast Mercury goes. But the fact that it's all Venus based, and this is where the guilt, the choices that we're making about relationships, about our values, like this becomes a very extreme kind of moment that's really going to be like, well, where am I taking everything, and what am I divining everything off of here? And I do think that it does make us like picky when maybe we're trying to control things a little bit too much. I think that the semi-square from Mars is kind of a rude awakening in a good way to kind of make you go, beggars can't be choosers. There's not going to be a lot out there. It all has to be created and reformed. And I learned that from studying every Saturn ingress in the Aries because of Nostradamus and every big thing. And I did it in my Hypergate schools, and everybody knows. Not a lot out there. But this is like wiping out humanity's 6,400 year run and opening it up to God knows what. Everything that we can't fully know yet and understand. Massive governments and system collapses beginning. This is the trigger point. This is the point that begins it all from a Helio standpoint, and of course the Geo. And what we're all really wanting is harmony, balance, relationship. What we all really want is connection on deep levels. Scorpio, like if you look at both charts, we all really want these other things. Yet we have them all. Everything's in the areas of where you have it. So appreciate what you have, because just even when it comes to world trade, all these kind of things, it's going to be changed so much, and the availability of things, right? It's not going to be the same world. We're also getting prepared this year in 2026 for the big Jupiter in Leo, but it's going to oppose Pluto. Yes, it's going to be in great aspect to Neptune. Yes, it's going to be in great aspect to Uranus. But that opposite point is bringing us back to the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction 3 times, which I always said that world travel, airlines, anything that's Jupiterian is going to fall apart. And we're halfway through that. And look at what's happened to airline travel. Look what's happened to planes and all that stuff. And we're just, 4 months away from that opposition. And that opposition will, you're not going to have the access that you used to. You're going to have new access to different ways. And a lot of it's going to be building this new world that's away from this kind of old systematic, like you do it by this way and everybody has to do it by this way. But you still are going to need people. And I think that's where a lot of people are like struggling, is figuring out how to form relationships, how to form friendships, how to form all these things. They're all stuck on the line doing it, and they don't know how to do it in the real world anymore. They don't know how to knock on their neighbor's door. You know, everybody's looking for their next happiness off some faraway place. And I'm here to tell you that that's over. And what happens in these kind of events, unfortunately, is this. The social upheaval and the terror that follows the plague. We're in a plague now. And you all know me, what I always predicted. I said, shadow reality, and that the shot won't work, and then it's going to come out bad. And that's already been happening, and that's already continued. But now that you got the Epstein files, my biggest prediction that his DNA is in it, and everybody that funded that shot is in those files, and that he funded. What is that going to do to the people left that took it, that are alive? Like, that's terrifying and upheavals. Why are they keeping those files so secret? Because it's too big of an upheaval of what it would do. But it can't stay secret. In a weird way, all the skeletons, the deaths, are of all the people who died during the Black Death. This is where you get your tarot from, by the way. The tarot first started off as like, you know, cards, like playing cards, but that, like, you know, you would see, but really they used to play dice. And especially in the 16th century. There was cards too, but Henry VIII used to play dice and cards. This image gave the ideas to these Renaissance versions of tarot. And where we get, I mean, if you look at, I mean, this is there's the Hangman. Every card that you can find is actually in here. There's the Page of Swords. There's the Lovers. And it's music and art. Why? Because in alchemy, there's chaos and there's order. And the things that counter that as an alchemist is art and it's human, but it's not human. It's nature. And it's not trees. It's human nature, and it has 3 breasts, the woman. Which means understanding that our human nature is not normal. And then understanding the music and the art is your way through. And I think that if you didn't hear, ironically, look at that. There's badminton back in the day, or backgammon. And there's the playing cards. Right? This is where the tarot really moves into. The Page of Swords is the doorway to tarot, and the doorway to the occult, and the doorway to the truth. I think in any tarot reading, if you ever get a Page of Swords with the Lovers, that's the ultimate. That's the only truth there actually is in a reading for love or for getting through anything. Everything else is just fucking noise. But, and there's the dice, right? So now I can zoom in real good. Ooh. Like, there you are. But I will say that this was a world like being chucked out. And we got to look at it the same way. That's what's happening. And how you get through that and where you use your Aries is having a better sense and not turning your back and listening to the signals. And with Saturn being strategic instead of reactive of what move to make. Not just, okay, I'm going to go make this move now. Right? It's almost not your plan. It's the plan that has to happen because that's the only way to go. Because the disruption factor hits critical mass, and we're in now a 3-month cycle of the most critical mass moment we've ever been in. So that's what I have for you all in this one, and I appreciate everybody for listening to this long horoscope and this special, because I just know nobody else is kind of bringing this out. And to stay positive in the sense of like, well, the only place really is like those lovers are not paying attention. They're doing music and art and fascinated with each other. But also, the Page of Swords, it's kind of funny because they show him in like the Rider-Waite with his sword out. In the original depiction of the painting of the Triumph of Death, he's got his sword in. He's the only one who has his eyes anywhere. If you notice in the whole painting, right? So, okay, not one person is looking at the exact place, and what he's seeing is the clock. Here's the octopus, but he's seeing this and see all the hidden dark energy that's in the background that's controlling the tower. So here's the tower card, right? So the tower actually, here's another tower, right? But that's the guard's tower, right? Eventually, when the real shit goes down, the real tower is the people sitting in power and hidden power when that tower falls. But you see, on the clock, it's at the right timing, and that's understanding the astrology. And then there's the cross. And if you notice, the southern cross is Capricorn, right? And it's sitting right at the bottom. He's pointing to the bottom of the chart. I can do this shit for fucking days, but most people are not ready. And you can see above, that looks like Leo. What he's pointing at is at the bottom of the southern cross, and where all those planets happened, like we're in, there is a hidden force doing dark shit. This is also the war in religion. The holy war is coming up. Saturn, Neptune, Aries. Man, I can do this forever. I'm going to get off now. But since I'm here, it's been a minute, and it's an eclipse. It's Saturn, Neptune. It's the biggest moment we've ever been through. I will take some questions, I guess, here. So if anybody has any questions. Oh, we have 807 people watching. Not bad. calling out the Bible thumpers. I'm calling out all religions because they're all based off a lie of changing the stories to their own way. All of them. Because Saturn, Neptune, Zero Aries predates the Old Testament, predates Egyptian, predates all that shit. Really, it gets into true, like, spiritual, like, stuff. It goes into pre-Babylon stuff, like, but it really is astrology. I don't question, do I believe in 9D 3ATHZ? I have no idea what that is. Sorry. Is that some sort of weed or something? Back in the day, I would have called that weed and I would have sold a shit ton of it. Yeah, but you don't have the 9D 3ATHZ? What's that? Yeah, I mean, the Holy War is already happening. Right? It's already happening with over Palestine. Really, it's about the temple. And really, you're seeing like all these like peace accords and all these things, right? And they're all going to be fighting over it. And, you know, the top three religions, those three are going to go at it. And they all are going to turn on each other. Right? Oh, 9 deaths like a cat because I'm on 7. 9 lives. I mean, do you think they'll ever release the jab info is all out there. Just most people don't want to go look at it. No, most people don't want to look. Right? And if you actually think about it kind of like in a deeper way, like what's kind of sad is like, you know, the church was in on that. Let me pull the high vibe chat up here. Yeah, my high vibe peeps up in here. All right. Religions are a construct of man. What's your ideas on the whole Anunnaki story? I mean, like, those are the kind of things that I think the origins of humanity, the stuff that we're trying to understand is what is going to be like the definition of where humanity started. So I don't think that we know fully. The idea that, it's this and it's that story for sure. There's more to it. We just have to we can't be in such surety of our egos trying to define that's what it is. Ironically, Laura, I'm actually focusing on the high vibe ones at the moment. When do you predict we make transition to all AI politicians? That seems a little far away, but you never know. But I mean, honestly, based off America's Pluto transit, right, and the idea of like the Constitutional Convention that happened, which then finally brought about the first president and the Constitution, which was Pluto moving into Pisces. It takes some time for all these new systems kind of come together, the new ones, but for the old systems to fall apart, we're at that. So it takes a while for those old things to fall, although we'll see them fall. I think they'll, of course, go to people. It just won't go straight to AI. So my prediction especially would be more the reevaluation of these kind of things with Chiron and Taurus, a lot of reevaluation with seeing how things go with the South Node Jupiter and Leo, and the idea of power, and especially when the South Node reaches Regulus, because that'll be the first time of Regulus and Virgo since the South Node has ever crossed Regulus and Virgo. It always crossed it in Leo for the last, 72 plus 29 or 30 degrees. So 30 times 7 is 20, is 2,000 plus years. So yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, we're going to see the questions come up, but I don't think the answer will be like AI will replace it right away. That AI is not fully there yet. I mean, they're battling at the Pentagon right now with Claude or Anthropic over the government contract and stuff right now. That was a big story today. Oh yeah, I am doing this DA like an old school LK Live. Are we in a genetic experiment that escaped the lab? That's a good question, Janie. I mean, honestly, that is more probably true than not true. Everything right now is what's more true than true, and you need to follow that, opposed to what's not so true, and you're making up in your own soul or head, and the illusion of the Pisces shit, right? So even there's a lot of conspiracies that are true, and then there's a lot of them that are false. So you have to live in a balanced state of mind. And we have to collect data. And I think right now we're in a space where people are just gripping subconsciously to many things, and they're not ready for the real world to kind of like expose itself. And then that has to happen in order for the new world to kind of start its very basic, very infantile beginnings. Just because Saturn and Neptune meet doesn't mean the day of that's the moment. That'll be the marker, but that's not, it's going to take some time. All right, I'll switch to some people here on YouTube. I mean, like Earth shift stuff we've been seeing a lot of, and that's definitely been Uranus back in Taurus. Like unstable Earth is Uranus and Taurus. So I feel like that's why once we get to the other side of Uranus back into Gemini, now innovation and things we start figuring things out. We don't really figure it out in Taurus. If anything, it's trade wars, it's alliances breaking, it's foundations crumbling, it's in the background, people building things for the things that are about to happen. Big debt that's incurred on the people without asking for it, right? So all the debt's on us, even though we didn't borrow all that money, but it's said that the people did. Oh, there's some YouTube comment on here. 1776, it takes Pluto 248 years, which brings it to 2024. Yeah, but that I'm talking about the cycle of the Revolutionary War. So like the reason why America didn't die during Pluto and Capricorn is because Pluto Capricorn. The French Revolution is Pluto Aquarius. It doesn't last long. That's the illusion. The deeper truth is Pluto revolutions are for a deeper cause for somebody else. And that brings on Napoleon. So the idea, though, was when would AI take over and be our representatives? It's like, well, the Constitution would have to be rewritten, and that would be either a state convention that could change the amendment, or, of course, plenty of people and a majority, the right amount of people in the Senate and the House and everything, and the president to sign an amendment and to change it to AI, which is very difficult. But the main thing was like looking at how the new system came in for the Revolutionary War was by Pluto in Pisces, where it really, the Constitution lived. The Bill of Rights didn't happen until George Washington made it while he was the first president. He went with the anti-federalists and helped them add that to the Constitution. The Constitutional Convention, the convention left the convention with the Constitution without a Bill of Rights. But most people don't know their history. Most people are just... So you have to think, and what was George Washington's farewell address? To stay a neutral country. Do not take favor with any country as an ally. Help when it's good for both parties and then leave. And so you're never indebted to them. And look at NATO. Look at all, these are going to be where the problems are going to be, is whether it's America and everybody's, whenever you're dealing with all these Uranus and very heavy Aquarian things, whatever the people think, it's not going to be that. So everybody thinks America is going to do all the bad shit. I'm happy that America's got the bad fucking rap. You know why? Because it's not going to be us. It's going to be some country that's been saying, how dare those Americans, that's going to not follow the contract. That's not going to follow NATO. That's not going to follow some convention. That's what happens. It's not what you think. It's not what's on the news. Never is. So, I'm curious, one question here on High Vibe from Mari. I'm curious how relationships thrive and how humanity continues through this time. So, I mean, the biggest blunder to humanity is that we don't know our origins, one, because it's all been like fed to us the same way that our horrible food is fed to us. The other thing is that these systems and that are in place are, look at social media, what it's done to relationships. Look at how everybody's looking for the next bigger, better thing. And it's all because of social media, online, and you can just take Gen Z and see that they have the largest anxiety. They're the first generation to be lower IQ than in all recorded history, right? That every generation gets higher IQ, that they get smarter, that they're faster, that they do things. It's the opposite. You just saw Gen Z do the opposite. So now we've hit a critical mass point that this system doesn't work. So humanity thrives, and it's going to be this disconnection, Pluto and Aquarius, of people living their lives through social media. People like comparing themselves so much. Pluto is the darkness, the shadow that's going to bring up the shadow of Aquarius, the following idea that we need to do this, other people do that, comparing yourself to everyone else. If you use Jeffrey Wolf Green, the true space is the opposite place. So it's Leo. You have to learn to love yourself again and not compare yourself, not worry what everybody else is doing. Know how to love and be loyal and stay loving. Not just, oh, well, I can just piece the fuck out, emergency hatch this bitch and fucking go into the next thing and go into the next thing and go into the next thing and go into the next thing. That's over. So it's ironic because America said, I'm out during Pluto and Capricorn, not Aquarius. Right? I'm not living by that old monarch rule. That's very Capricorn. Let's not forget that this solar eclipse is happening on America's moon. Right? So, I mean, which ironically, I use the Sag rising chart. So this is hitting, the moon rules the 8th house of America. So America's about to go through a massive transformation. America has a very strong chart, though. It's Sun, Jupiter. It's got a lot of 7th house. It's got North Node, Leo. America's going to be okay in the end. It's going to change a lot. It's going to take its beatings, but it's going to make it through. The main thing I think that's going to be the hard place is places like Europe, right? Like the European Union is what's going to fall. It's a Scorpio. I've always been correct on every transit with that. Even the Brexit, I was correct on that. Just follow that chart. You can see how negative the EU is. So, and the crisis happening in the Ukraine-Russian war, and China now saying they want to step in and help Ukraine. What does that mean? That just happened today. So you're seeing the way you thrive through it is you realize, okay, these things have to come down. Right? So, but I think a lot of it is that you thrive through not letting your ego run the show. Right? It's like in golf. You drive for show, but how you putt is where you make the dough. A lot of people want to get their big driver out and look badass and hit it as far as they can down the fucking fairway. That's so the problem in the world today. Instead of those important moments where it's with the putter and your focus and your dedication and taking the time and the patience with your ego to focus and get the ball in the hole. But everybody's just, I want to go. I think the video I showed of the horse going over in the ring, that's totally, everybody, a fire horse, every TikToker, fire horse, and the shedding of the skin of the snake. That's not how it works. It's so, I can't even believe people are saying this shit. I can't even, so you know what? I'm going to match it. I'm going to use the ring, and I'm going to use the fire horse that's on a boat, because Saturn and Neptune is the ocean. It's on a fucking boat, and Saturn's boats, and it's on a boat, and it really is going to try and jump off like a fire out of the fucking boat and die within the first day or two of the fucking solar eclipse. Like, you've been going through the snake and shedding the skin. I'm sorry. Go talk to a real Chinese astrologer. Oh my God. Oh man, I like laugh. I think the Western world's fucked everything up. That's going to be the big pendulum swing of, if you want to be honest, how does humanity thrive? We're going to be the East now, the old East, right? Like how China and everything was. And you're going to watch the West and the East flip. Right? To the power and the dominance will be on the East, and on the West, in the Western countries, we're going to be trying to scrap things back together. But that gives us tenaciousness, and that gives us the ability to want to survive again and all that stuff. You have to remember, we're lazy. We are the nations with the worst health. We are the nations with the worst testing scores. We're the nations that just, our militaries are lazy. We are not what we all think we are. So, and I think the big illusion is if you think that you can do this alone. That's the big illusion. You can't, everything that's showing up, it's too sloppy. There's too many craziness. You think you could do it alone? And that's different than who you do it with and all the Aquarian stuff. Like what's on the right frequency, of course. But if you're just going to go try and do this walkabout alone, good luck. So, well, there's a lot of people. You got 220 people on High Vibe and over 800 some people. Again, I appreciate everybody coming in to join in for this. And 841 people right now. Yeah. So thanks for making it over 1,000 peeps live. And, I'll just shamelessly plug, if people want to know, this week on Wednesday, I'm going to do my Saturn Neptune special to go into these predictions. So let me if you go to the leoking.com, my 2 ebooks are out. My one on how to build and use AI, Cosmic Code, and then my 2026 predictions with every sun sign and the first round of predictions, which I didn't say here because they're too extreme. So if you want to know for $29 how to literally code everything and ship and create conscious AI, just $29. And then my sun sign book, which has every zodiac sign. It's like 4 pages each zodiac sign of and rising, whatever you use, and how to get through 2026 and the biggest evolution with all these transits that are happening and what your new life will look like for decades ahead. And my first round of predictions. That's at theLeoKing.com, those 2 ebooks. Or, of course, the events. This week I'm at the Conscious Life Expo. I do have a booth. It's been 11 years since I have a booth. I'm speaking on the Sunday. And then I'm doing the Astrology Symposium, which will be happening on Monday. I'll be with Rick Levine. I'll be with Astro Blitz. So those are the post ones. I forgot. Oh, wait. I'm post conference, and then so there's me right here. I'm pretty sure I'm on Sunday. I'm talking about the Heavens Reset. Yeah, Sunday at 4 to 4:45 p.m. I'm doing a free lecture this year. The last 3 years I did paid. I chose to do a free one because I'm gonna have a booth, and then I'm doing there's a lot of people here, and then of course this post conference. And even Bashar's doing post conference like this. Billy Carson, the post conference is pretty big this year. So from 3 to 7 p.m. So even if you just come Monday night, it's $100 in advance or $125 at the door. It's a 4-hour full-blown astrology symposium, and it's Rick Levine, Jane Mastler, Astrology Bliss, Master Clarice Chen, she's a Chinese astrologer, Cassandra Butler, she's amazing, and me. That's gonna be awesome. Like that, there's nothing like this happening anywhere right now. And to get all of our insight for 4 hours. So that's gonna be on Monday at 3 to 7 p.m. And that's gonna be a big room. A lot of people. It's in the Los Angeles room, so it's gonna be big. And then my other event is the New Living Expo. I am super excited for this one too. I'll be up in Marin County for this one, and there is a full-blown event happening after 8 p.m. A full spiritual I don't know if I'm allowed to say that yet, but let's just call it a fucking spiritual, awesome, badass party rave. And I am DJing it. And I am speaking at it. And this one has so many awesome people. Billy Carson's at this one too. Man, I guess him and I are just back to back on a lot of these. Sean Kelly, a lot of people all over the place. Sasha Stone's also at both. There's a lot of kind of overlap on both of them. But this one's up in Marin County, and this one, Portal to Ascension, took it over. So this is a whole kind of revive of the New Living Expo that's been around for over 2 decades. Definitely, if you're in NorCal or want to come to this one is going to be amazing. There's a ton of people at this one. What's up, Michelle? Michelle's a good friend of mine. And then I'm at Team Light in May in Sedona, and Guardians of the Galaxy, and at the most epic event. I have the most fun doing these events, honestly, and I DJ these ones too. And then we're doing the Crystal Ball dance party after on the 9th, the evening of the 9th, and we do the whole Galactic Ball, the red carpet event, but also all the speakers and the event. The facility in Sedona is amazing at the Performing Arts Center, and that's May 8th through the 10th. So that's going to be badass, and it always is. I've been doing a lot of work with Team Light now for many years, whether it's 2 events a year or 1 event a year, every year for like 3 years now straight. And there's more stuff, of course, but Hypergate got all the new updates. So when you go, and this is the astrology that actually is AI that actually works, and it has worked for 2 years, and it is mind-blowing. When you go into the gateway and all of the tuning, and of course with all the different agents, with human design just got another upgrade, of course with the love guide, when you run other people's charts and composites, of course the natal charts and synastry, the ephemeras, everything's built in, all the agents, and it's working better than anything. And you can tune it for quick, steady, deep, and response lengths, normal, detailed, short, and it's full Agentic astrology AI and built the best way, and pick all charts and add as many charts as you want. Even put your PDFs or whatever you want through for work you're doing or whatever, and you want the astrological point of it all and knowing your chart. That's how crazy Hypergate is. And Spirit Dial, I did separate the product that people want the most, which is the future partner vision. So you don't have to get the love reveal reading. If you go to spiritdial.ai, you can just buy credits. So you don't have to have a subscription, right? 10 credits is $4.99. For 5 credits, you get the future partner vision, where you put in, do you want to show me a male or female? You can put a question, you can put your full chart data, and this gives you a full look at your chart and will predict the exact timing, the location, and the vision of the person for your future if you're single, and what they're going to look like based off. It's like 8,500 lines of data that I have on that. Spirit Dial is awesome. It's more than just the psychic AI. It does a lot more of the candy stuff, like crystal ball visions, speaking with a full-blown Lady Avalon psychic. That took me a year, but it's fucking scary accurate. And tons of stuff on there, and relationships and all that stuff. And then, the biggest one is Beyond the Veil that I've been doing. As far as, this is free. Of course, there's a premium if you want it, but it's free. So I've created the mundane astrology news channel, right? So every story coming through. So just 2 hours ago, I guess, Elizabeth Warren criticizes Tesla's reported 0 federal taxes in California. It gives you the chart, gives you the aspects, gives you the story, and this one's a paid one. They're not all paid. A lot of them are free. So if you click the veil, not behind the veil, they're free. So Rhode Island police, man who shot his family at ice rink went by Trump, Iran signals indirect role in Geneva, Iran nuclear talks. And here's the whole thing, the breakdown, the historical echoes, what to watch over the dates ahead and making predictions. Of course, the map, the global heat map. This will show you where all the stories are in about the next month. After I've collected all this data, it'll have a moment. It'll have another chart where it'll show you the next 30 days. So it'll predict the events, and it'll predict the kind of situations that are happening around the world, and knowing if you're living in a hot zone. And I've got it a map to where all the stories are populating, and also where all the predictions are, to where you'll be able to get very more pinpoint if you're in an area that's a hot topic about something, for predicting, but also for looking in the past. And Beyond the Veil is the first ever mundane astrology news network. Actually records for our history all the stories every hour, does the astrology for them, makes the predictions, records them, understands the story, makes the charts for them. So it's not just about people anymore, it's about events. Every event, every story that is coming out in our press around the world every day, every hour. And so this has been running now for 2 weeks, and I'm just going to keep running it, and we are going to change the world with this kind of stuff and understanding how to predict the future better using AI and all these other tools and astrologers that know what they're doing. So if you really want to join me on my quest, I do, of course, have my AI studio, the Leo King's AI studio, and all the products that I've done, and the SLM that I'm building. And if you're really interested in that, you can go to the leokingai.com. If you're interested in being an investor, or you really want the API to the SLM that I'm building, or you're a custom developer, hit me up. Or you're really, really wanting to join the cause, you can hit me up and get in touch with me at the leokingai.com. All right, I'm going to leave with that. I appreciate you all. Remember, I'm doing that special event. I don't have the image yet. I'll put up the event tomorrow, but it's going to be Wednesday, and it's going to be Forging the River, and how before that Saturn-Neptune is your last moment to make the right choices in your life, because you live with them for eternity after. I appreciate you all very much. See you on the next one. Adios. Bye-bye.